Hey, what's up guys? Tyler here with Secure Team. So before we start the video, I want you to look at this image here, this compilation of celebrity faces. And I want you guys just to see how many people you recognize, okay? How many of these celebrity faces do you recognize or that you have seen before? And I'll give you guys a couple of seconds. Okay, so how many of you recognized maybe one or two of these faces? How many of you recognized maybe 4 or 5? Well, you shouldn't have recognized any, because every face here does not exist and is a fake created by an artificial intelligence computer system. And there are thousands more just like it, potentially millions, all coming out of some new research being put forth by NVIDIA, which is the technology company most notable for the graphics cards and processors inside of your computer when you play video games. And it would appear that NVIDIA, who is most likely working with Uncle Sam, and they all do, they are using AI to create people out of thin air. And it's become quite disturbing to some people. Now, some of you may remember that this past summer, there was, well, what is called an image generator that hit the web, where you could basically draw a crude doodle of a face, and after which this AI, or artificial intelligence, would turn it into a photorealistic looking human face. And so it was part of something called the Pix2Pix project. And it was powered by a next level machine learning technique called generative adversarial networks. And so now NVIDIA has developed a system that employs GAN to create far more realistic faces. Now, before we go further, just to show you a few examples of this Pix2Pix project, where again, you can draw anything. It can be a face, it can be a picture of a shoe, or an animal, or a building, and this system will turn it into something that almost looks like it was snapped by a camera. So here you're seeing where someone crudely drew a shoe, a slip-on woman's shoe, and over here you can see that the AI system not only identified the correct coloring, but also the texture, the lighting, and made a very realistic copy. What was most impressive to me was, well, first there's two. This one here, of what appears to be a kitten that someone has crudely drawn, and next to it, something that, again, I would think was real, or came from a real photograph had you not told me that it was created off a doodle. And then finally, what's probably the most amazing to me is that we have this drawing here that looks like it was made using nothing more than MS Paint, which is then rendered into a realistic image of a building that looks like it came right off of a New York City corner. And so this is the technology that is being implemented in this new fake face generation research. And so NVIDIA released a video of their GAN in action. Again, GAN stands for Generative Adversarial Network. And in this video that was released, and I'll put the link to it down below, these artificial intelligence created faces are both absolutely remarkable and incredibly eerie. If the average person didn't know that the faces were machine generated, they would easily be fooled into believing they were living people, as I did before I knew what the video was for. And indeed, this sort of blurring of the line between the human and the machine generated has been a big topic of discussion within the realm of AI. And it's got a lot of people disturbed. A lot of people think it's cool, which on one level it is. It's interesting, it's cool. But again, we know that when technology like this comes out, usually either the CIA, the NSA, the government, usually always has their hand in the back pocket of these companies and will take this tech and they will abuse it. They've done it before, they will do it again. And so there's a question of what are the applications for a software like this other than creating fake people for dubious reasons. I mean, I don't even want to think of all the applications this could be used for, whether it be creating patsies, putting people that are not real into photographs that could then be later used as false evidence. I just don't want to think of it. And if you thought this was disturbing, it gets much worse, trust me. There are a number of AIs that are using something called deep learning techniques to also produce human-sounding speech. Google, for instance, has something called WaveNet, which can now copy human speech almost perfectly. Now, there's also a startup called Lyrebird, and it has an algorithm that is able to synthesize a human's voice using only 1 minute of audio. Now, just think about that. Using only 1 minute of audio, this thing can copy your voice. And, immediately when I heard that, it made me think back to a film that came out in the 80s. Many of you probably don't know, many of you maybe do, but it was called Tango and Cash. And it was sort of this action buddy cop film that had Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell. And there was one point in the film where Kurt Russell discovers that there is this audio tape of him on there talking about some pretty dubious things. He realizes that it's a computer-generated voice. And in the film, it's used to frame him, saying some very incriminating things. And so that's the first thing, literally, that I thought of when I heard that they would be able to synthesize your voice. So imagine the government has the power to take a small amount of audio of you talking, and before you know it, you are listening to a recording of what sounds like you, is talking like you, but that is saying some very scary things that you didn't say. And now, imagine the applications of that. Speaking of things that can be used for dubious reasons, and I do realize I'm saying dubious a lot, but that's my favorite word for today. In other videos, it's massive or mysterious, but today it's dubious. And so other dubious ways that this technology can be used is not only creating fakes, but editing real-time videos and erasing things. Now, many of you may remember this, but around 7 years ago, a video came out online displaying something called diminished reality. And what this was a piece of software that you could load into a camera that would be able to remove objects from a video in real time, as in while you are recording. And so we all know about augmented reality. It's used today. But back then, this German software company created something called diminished reality. Now, we've seen similar for photos, but this software can neatly delete any object from live full motion video. And you're seeing examples of that here, whether it's a person, whether it's an inanimate object, a chair, basically anything you select, this thing will remove. And the effect is achieved using an image synthesizer that reduces the image quality first, removes the object, and then increases the image quality back up. And all of this takes place within 40 milliseconds, fast enough that the viewer doesn't notice any delay. And as the camera moves, the system maintains the illusion through tracking algorithms and guesswork. And the video and images that you're seeing here were just the first rough cut from 7 years ago. And look how amazingly scary it is. Now, the only real application up to that point for diminished reality, as it's now called, was maybe used back in the days of Hollywood and still used today, where they would edit out things in motion pictures, like wires, for instance. You got a guy swinging on wires, they erase them out in post and make it look like the guy is flying. Well, this does the same thing, only in real time. And while you could say it may be a helpful tool in movie editing, the hard truth is that it's not really being used in Hollywood. And after this came out 7 years ago, we have heard very little about this software since, and it's thought by many people that it too has been licensed to or just straight up taken away and is now being utilized by the government for some really dubious stuff. And again, you can only imagine the applications of something like this in order to completely erase anything that you don't want to show up in a video. So let your clock tick on that. And yeah, I think that artificial intelligence has a great many positives. But I do think that there is a line that needs to be drawn before the technology reaches the point where it can harm the public or be used in a counterproductive manner. And that is why people are a little bit on edge regarding this new software.